Hello people of the internet, it's Amanda, and for today's video, I'm here to talk to you about two films. Now before I start talking about them, I just want to say that I was wondering which film I should do a video for poll in the community tab, and I was surprised that two films were almost neck and neck. So I figured that maybe I should try a new format here on my channel where when this happens, where I feel like there's just a couple of films that I would want to talk about for like a particular week or so, then maybe I should just make a collective type of video talking about both of them, and you can just make use of the chapters feature down below so that you can go or skip to the review that you want to see. With that said, I'm going to be talking about Love Like the Falling Petals starring Nakajima, Kento, and Matsumoto, Honoka, and Kaguya-sama Love is War 2 or Kaguya-sama Love is War Final starring Hirano and Hashimoto Kanna. Now, you guys, if you've been watching my videos for quite some time now, then you would know that I'm a fan of both Nakajima, Kento, and Hirano. I did an entire episode by episode video with Miman Kesatsu, their drama from 2020, and I really enjoyed their partnership. I really wish that they could work on another project together, but I don't know, it's just kind of like funny for me to be trying out this new format with either of them as the leads of like the two films that I'm going to be talking about. Now with that said, I'm gonna start off with Love Like the Falling Petals. So this film was announced by Netflix March of 2021, if I remember correctly, and ever since I was pretty excited about it because it's gonna be aired in line with Cherry Blossom season in Japan. The plot is pretty compelling. I feel like, you know, it's definitely one of those romance drama type of films that, you know, it's kind of like cliche at this point with Your Lie in April, I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, but it's a kind of genre that just speaks to people, and you just couldn't get enough of these types of like sad romance types of movies, and Love Like the Falling Petals definitely fall on this particular niche as well. Now, the story is about Asakura Haruto, played by Nakajima Kento. He was an aspiring photographer, but because of a lot of circumstances, like he realized that he wasn't good enough and that he didn't really have this potential that he thought he had. So, you know, all this like existential midlife quarter life crisis kind of like thing, he kind of like lost his way for a moment, and things started to change when he met the hairdresser Ariake Misaki, played by Matsumoto Honoka. Now, Misaki is like really bubbly. She's very enthusiastic about her job, and she's very passionate about the whole like learning about hairdressing and hairstyling and all of those things. And Haruto was her first customer, so she was really like excited and happy talking to him, and it was like love at first sight for Haruto at that particular moment because he was really charmed by this energy that Misaki has that he doesn't really have. And because of that, he constantly went back to the salon to get his haircut so that he could get to know her, talk to her, and all of these things. Now, during the day when he finally plucked up the courage to ask her out, turned around and she cut him. Now, she was very apologetic, and when she asked him how could she possibly pay him back for what happened, like if they can see the cherry blossoms together. And at first, Misaki was very hesitant to do so, but she went along with it, and Haruto admitted to her that he wasn't in fact a photographer, and actually he was just working part-time at a karaoke place and stuff like that, and he really wanted to be a photographer, but he kind of like gave up on that idea, and that angered Misaki, not because of the idea that he lied to her, but because of the fact that, you know, how she would feel about him or perceive him if he told her the truth or something like that. And because of that, you know, they kind of stopped talking for a bit, and then eventually when Haruto talks to Misaki again, apparently he told her that he went back to the old photography studio to become an apprentice again, and he wanted to be the photographer that he promised her that he would become. And eventually that sort of like developed their relationship. It was pretty cute, you know, your typical romance type of story where they were getting to know each other, they were trying to like start understanding each other, spend a lot of time together, and really just falling in love with each other in the process. And it was at one point where we learn that Misaki has progeria. Now, progeria is an actual illness where a person ages faster than their actual age, at least physically, and their body also ages. It's a genetic disease, but they kind of like fictionalized it for dramatic purposes in this particular film, but it is a real thing. It's a real illness, and if you're curious about it, then you can look it up after you've seen the movie or before you've seen the movie. But yeah, again, for it is a real illness, but they fictionalized it a bit to create that suspense or transition or anything like that in the particular film. Now, Misaki was diagnosed with progeria, which eventually manifested in the way that she looked as well as the conditions of her body. Because of it, so after one last quote-unquote goodbye moment with Haruto, she suddenly disappeared from his life. Now, Haruto has been leaving her a lot of messages asking her what happened and stuff, but she made up her mind. She quit her job in the salon. And the only person who knows about her condition at the particular moment was the doctor, Misaki's older brother, and the fiance of her older brother, who is really like family to them. Like the fiance treats her as much of like a real little sister as much as she treats her like an older sister. So it's not, what's interesting about this film is after that particular moment where Misaki leaves Haruto, it doesn't just become this like love story, but it also becomes this it also shifts focus into family and how Misaki's family was trying to get through this entire situation. It was seen that her brother was trying his hardest so that she could get treatment. They even got scammed by this quack doctor idea where they use electrocution to sort of like cure her. So there's definitely a build-up in terms of the drama in between the film, which I saw a lot of critics say that that's when they felt like the film started to lose its momentum. But for me, I mean, with its 2-hour runtime, I have to agree that it is definitely something that's too long. But if you just want to and especially if you were just watching it for the romance aspect of it, obviously there's a huge chunk of the movie where Haruto just disappears and we just see him from time to time, like what he's doing, how he's taking in Misaki's absence and stuff like that, especially since he's expressed how much he loves her and how much he's willing to like marry her and to see his entire life with her, you know, and he suddenly disappears from that to develop this other story of Misaki and her family, and just, you know, this other side to the illness and the acceptance of it, and just, you know, everything about it. Now, eventually, Misaki's brother realizes that Misaki was suffering, especially at the peak. Like, everything about her started changing, her physical appearance. She looks a lot older. And what's interesting about this is they don't really show it every single time. Like, there are very, very few moments where we actually see the development of Misaki's physical appearance when it came to, you know, the story. And I feel like it has to do with like the prosthetics and everything like that. Probably it's a very more of like a production choice, if you will, but I'll tap more on my ideas of that later on. But yeah, eventually Misaki's brother realized that Misaki is still in love with Haruto, and he contacts him, and then Haruto and Misaki starts talking again, but just through the door of her bedroom. So he never really saw her while she was sick. The last time that they saw each other face to face was in the particular moment when everything was still okay, at that last moment, you know. And eventually Haruto tells Misaki that, you know, he's made progress when it comes to his career, like he's actually going to have an exhibition really soon, and that the exhibition will take place and he's inviting her. And then it eventually happens, but Misaki was already very frail and very old looking, but she still goes to the exhibit and she sees all these things And Haruto, on the other hand, goes to her house and then realizes that he didn't cross paths with Misaki. And so he rushes back to the studio in the hopes that they would see each other. They do see each other because Haruto sees an old woman, which is Misaki, slumped down to the ground. She was very, very tired and weak, and that's why she fell down. And he helps her up with a smile on his face, and but it was obvious that he didn't recognize her because of the difference in her appearance, and they never really saw each other again, as I mentioned, while she was in that particular state. Misaki didn't introduce herself to him, but rather after that particular scene where Haruto helps her up and tells her to take care wherever she's going, Haruto continues to rush off to the studio in the hopes of finding the Misaki that he knows. And then cut to the next scene where we find out that Misaki already passed away, and Haruto was giving tribute to her altar at home, and Misaki's brother was saying that even at the last moment, you know, they never invited Haruto because Misaki was pretty insistent on the idea. But then he asked if he can go to her room, and when he enters her room, he recognizes the hat that she was wearing that day when they crossed paths in the snow, and he helped her up. And that's when he realized that that was Misaki that he was talking to, and that he didn't recognize her. And that was a pretty emotional moment for Haruto, especially with everything else. Like he had this like realizing how come he didn't recognize her, and that she passed away without him being able to like talk to her again face to face in that particular manner. Things were a little bit more like turning into tragic, and after that, with Haruto feeling all these different emotions and stuff. But at the last minute, he receives this letter from Misaki, and it was interesting because she told him that they never saw each other that day. So it was kind of indicative of the fact that she wasn't sorry, or she wasn't angry at Haruto for not recognizing her at that particular moment, and that she thanked him for the photographs. And it was just like so many things that happened that led Haruto to be able to like move on from the situation. Now, overall, I have to say that, again, the runtime of the film is around 2 hours or so. And if you're just in it for the romance, then definitely the middle part of the drama would feel kind of like, eh. But for me personally, again, and it's, I think, very dependent on the experience itself as well, since I love the lead actors in the film. I genuinely personally like it, but again, if you're a casual viewer, or if you're in just for the romance, then it might be something that feel a little bit boring right in the middle. But for me, again, another thing that I noticed about this is a lot of people are criticizing the fact that Misaki's character seemed kind of like stuck, because even until the end, it was more of her focusing on her physical appearance or anything like that. But for me, I never saw that as a problem when it came to this story. Like, after all, we find out her perspective when she entered Haruto's exhibition, where she said that in her photograph, so Haruto wasn't able to like take a photo of her back when she still looked like her. And so for her, even places and memories captured in time just like that, and remains constant just like that, it's a big deal, because it makes sense for a person to like that. That just stands for why photographs are very important, and other people might not understand why it's significant for us to photograph a certain thing or anything like that. But at the end of the day, it means something to someone, or it means something to the photographer, or whoever the photographer is addressing to. And that was the point of that last sequence. For Misaki, she was able to go back to the moments where she was still her, or she felt like she was still most of herself, through those photographs. And I think that makes sense plot-wise, and I don't think that, especially for this type of story, like the idea of, you know, accepting yourself or anything like that, or how you look like, it's a very idealistic kind of like manner, because I think for everyone, especially for anyone who's suffering from anything really, there is definitely a level of denial that goes into it. And I feel like people love to idealize certain stories in a way that to reinforce some sort of positivity, even in a situation that I feel like this movie delivered in a very raw manner and a very understandable manner. Another thing that I like about this is since they don't show a lot of Matsumoto Honoka's face while she was in the progeria part of like the story, we have to focus a lot more on the emotions of the people that she's talking to, most specifically her brother and the fiance of her brother. And I really like the exchanges that happen, because there's definitely a lot of like we feel the scene through the POV of these people, as well as for Misaki and just her voice, like the voice acting that went into this and the expression of like anguish. It's kind of like hard to express emotions, not being able to like show the audience your face to connect that emotion, so it's all very vocal. And I think Matsumoto Honoka really did a good job in terms of doing that, because most of her scenes, especially with her face not in focus, in very emotional moments, like I think it really helped in that particular aspect. So yeah, and I think she did a really good job. Now, zooming in on Nakajima Kento. So obviously I know Kento's acting from his many projects, but I feel like this one is really something where he really pushed out like a lot of like a lot of like layers in terms of his emotions, especially when it came to when Misaki was telling him that she left him for another guy, and which was completely a lie, but it was her way of like of sort of like wanting him to move on already and to not ask any more questions or anything like that. And I feel like I like the buildup of emotions from Kento in that particular scene. The scene where he finds out that Misaki was the woman that he helped in the snow, and realizing that when he saw the hat. I feel like that was really good. Like that was really good acting on Kento's part. So again, for this film, for me personally, like I cried a lot, but I easily cry a lot with these types of movies. But for me, I really cried for this film. I feel like it's definitely a wonderful film, but it really depends on your cup of tea, what you would feel about it, if you're able to like go past it or anything like that. But yeah, for me personally, it's something that I like. It's not new. We've experienced this kind of like film before with the films that I mentioned earlier, but it is something that I feel like, especially if you're a fan of either Kento or Honoka, it's something that you would want to check out. And it's just kind of like interesting for Netflix to start pushing out more projects with like with more Japanese projects, especially since there's a lot of like, you know, more Korean content being pushed out on the platform. So yeah, this one was just really interesting. And yeah, let's move on to Kaguya-sama Final. Now for Kaguya-sama Final, this film I mean, I also do love both Kanna and Sho. I love that they were able to like do this project. Even with the first one, I feel like it's like a dream tandem when it comes to like these two top idols, or be able to like create this like project, which was really nice and fun. The first film was definitely just kind of like fun and silly and cringy, and even so I absolutely love it. Kawai Hayato is the one who directed it, and he is known for really like recreating the anime-esqueness of a live action film, like in terms of vividness, in terms of cinematography, in terms of just the production and everything. If you've seen Nisekoi, again starring Nakajima Kento, he's also Kawai Hayato is also the one who directed that, as well as Kaguya-sama 1 and also Kaguya-sama 2. So he definitely has a flair when in terms of recreating the anime world into a live action, which I really like. But I know that it's not a cup of tea of a lot of people, because they find some live action films real cringy. For me, I absolutely enjoy it, not just for Kaguya-sama, but for other things, because it's just fun and it helps you immerse yourself into the world. Because sometimes my main gripe with live action films, especially for example for Hyoka, starring Hirose Alice and Yamazaki Kento. Hyoka was a very vivid anime when it came, because Kyoto Animation was the one who worked. We're the ones who worked on that particular anime, but because the live action tapped more into the realism of it, so the film is okay plot-wise, but the imagery is just very dull in my opinion. So yeah, so I think for this one, really loved what Kawai Hayato did with the Kaguya-sama films. As for the plot, they covered storylines that I actually really love, which was Ishigami's backstory, in which I feel like is one of the very emotional plot lines in the film, and I absolutely really like that. But what I like about this film in general is, as compared to the first film where we're just being introduced to Shirogane and Shinomiya's love battle, for this one it was really more of Shinomiya Kaguya's exploration of her feelings, and them being able to sort of like mellow down with the whole battle thing or the mind game thing, and just really focusing on trying to make each other confess, or finally confess, because they're about to end their life in high school. And I really like that turn, because now it actually feels like a rom-com. It zooms in on the romance aspect of the film, but zooming in first on the idea of like the Ishigami arc. Again, I absolutely love that arc. I love they kind of like tweaked it a bit in a way that that there was this part from the anime that's definitely a lot more confrontational when it comes to Ishigami and what happened in that backstory at present. So if you've seen the anime, then you would know what I'm talking about. But overall, I feel like they did a really good job in terms of creating that atmosphere for Ishigami's growth, as well as his relationship with like the other characters, especially with Shirogane. And at the same time, it really zooms in and highlights what Kaguya loves about Shirogane as a character. Now, I personally love Shirogane as a character, anime, manga, live action, and it's because of this like level of altruism and kindness and just straightforwardness that he has when it comes to treating other people, but he's also very grounded and has a lot of like insecurities about himself, like, but as a person who helps other people out, like, he's really just good at it. And this film really reinforced that through the perspective of Kaguya, and I really like that. I love the rooftop scene. It's definitely one of my favorite scenes. I think Kanna and Sho both talked about that scene as well. Like, it's also one of their favorite scenes. And when it comes to the heart-fluttering moments, I like how the mind, like, it's still a nice shift between emotional moments and comedy, but because the nature of the film, the punchlines in between the moments doesn't seem horrible. It's kind of like different if it's like a straightforward romance drama type of thing that you insert a joke here and there that's very ill-timed, but because of the nature of Kaguya-sama and just the niche of the film in general, it feels okay. And I like the nice balance of drama and comedy for this film as well. I really like how they wrap things up, because obviously they had to take a different term when it comes to the anime. The anime is still ongoing, but for this one, since they said that this is gonna be the final film, then therefore they have to wrap things up. I like what they did in terms of how they concluded everything. I just wasn't that big of a fan of the end sequence, like with Shinomiya and Shirogane hugging it out in the end. I mean, there were a couple of kissing scenes in the film, but it ended with this like really weird, awkward hug, which I don't know. Like, I feel like it's really more on framing, I guess, and how everything was or anything like that. But it was really more of, it was fine overall. But just for me, there's just something really funny and awkward about that particular like last sequence. But I absolutely really love the humor and yeah, again, the balance of comedy, humor, and anything like that. But again, yeah, it's not everyone's type of film. You're easily I don't know, put off by these kinds of like exaggerated things, then I suggest you don't watch this film. But it's just a really fun film in general, and I find it like just really, really nice and funny. Yeah, the kissing scenes, obviously, like with the Japanese kissing scenes, especially with anime adapted type of content, it's still very but it's okay, it works. And I don't know, it's just a fun film. I feel like it's quite long, with again 2-hour runtime, so many things happening. If you're not a fan of like the source material or anything like that, then you probably like wouldn't appreciate as much. But I don't know, I really, really enjoyed like even the Easter eggs for this film. Like they had one scene where Cinderella Girl was being sung in the karaoke, and Shirogane was played by Hirano Show, obviously sang Cinderella Girl, this group King and Prince, was trying to like sing along with it. There's also this funny moment where canonically, again, Shirogane doesn't know how to sing or dance, but Hirano Show is an idol who can do both, and it's just quite funny to see him pretending not to. I absolutely love Fujiwara so much. Like, I absolutely love her from the first film to second film. I like that the cast dance to Koifuru at the end of the film, which is King and Prince song that was also the theme song for the film. I like there was this moment where I'm not sure if it's deliberate or anything like that, where when Kaguya went to the rooftop to look for Shirogane, when she figured out the mystery of this entire thing with the balloons, like the surprise or anything like that in the plot. I like where she said Ima aini yukimasu, which is similar to the title of Hirano Show's favorite film. So I don't know if all these Easter eggs, considering that there are a lot of like Easter eggs, especially even with Kanna's roles and like other projects, they like kind of like put this into this film because again, it's very comedic. It can entertain these kinds of things, like this meta type of stuff. So I'm not sure if that's also intentional, but I know I just caught it and it was just really, really nice and interesting in terms of details. But yeah, overall, nice film, funny film. But yeah, not everyone's cup of tea, but I personally enjoyed it. Definitely a lot better than the first one in my opinion. So yeah. With that said, so tell me down in the comments below, do you like this kind of like format? Do you enjoy it? I don't know. Tell me down in the comments below what are your thoughts on either film or which films you watch and stuff like that. Other films that you would want me to check out, please tell me down in the comments below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel and you would want to hear more from me, please hit subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you again soon in a new one.